Every empire believes it is different. Every empire thinks it will last forever. The Romans ruled for centuries, believing their roads would stretch across eternity. The Spanish built a global empire so vast the sun never set on it. The British controlled trade, oceans, and entire continents. And the Soviet Union seemed unstoppable until the day it vanished overnight. Each of them followed the same invisible script. They rose from nothing, reached incredible heights, and then, step by step, crumbled from within. The truth is that history has never been random. It follows a pattern that repeats so precisely it's almost mathematical. Historians have seen it unfold across time, from the glory of Rome to the collapse of the USSR. And now, that same pattern points to the United States. Because if the timeline is correct, America has already reached stage 5 of the 7-stage empire collapse cycle. Imagine this: an empire so powerful it controls global finance, influences every culture on Earth, commands the most advanced military in history, and yet beneath all that strength, cracks begin to show. Debt mounts, division spreads, the middle class shrinks, and faith in institutions fades. The people keep working harder, but everything feels more expensive. Allies start questioning, enemies grow bolder, and inside, the empire begins to doubt itself. That's where America is today. Not in open collapse, not yet, but in the same place every empire found itself before the fall. The story we're about to explore isn't conspiracy or speculation. It's history repeating itself. The 7-stage pattern is a model drawn from centuries of rise and decline. It explains why every dominant power, no matter how mighty, eventually hits the same milestones: ambition, growth, excess, division, debt, and collapse. And the United States, according to this pattern, is standing at one of its final turning points. To understand where America stands, we have to go back to Rome's crumbling Senate, to Spain's overflowing gold fleets, to Britain's global overstretch, to the Soviet Union's quiet economic death. Each empire thought its story would end differently. Each one thought, we're too advanced to fail. Yet they all reach the same stage. When power turns to pride, prosperity turns to inequality, and unity turns to division. That's the moment when decline begins. In the next 30 minutes, we'll trace this entire pattern, from the birth of greatness to the edge of collapse, and see where the United States fits inside it. We'll follow the 7 stages that repeat through time and reveal the uncomfortable truth that no empire, no matter how advanced or moral, escapes the cycle. We'll see how America's incredible rise mirrors the greatest civilizations of the past, and how the signs of their downfall are appearing again, right now, in real time. Because collapse never happens overnight. It begins slowly, almost invisibly, in the background of prosperity. Roads still work, markets still move, people still live their lives believing tomorrow will be the same. But underneath, the structure weakens, the trust fades, and the empire begins to forget what made it strong in the first place. By the time the collapse becomes visible, it's already too late. The fall is just the final act of a story written decades before. So tonight, as we explore the 7 stages of empire collapse, look closely at the signs. The same economic traps, the same political fractures, the same arrogance of thinking, this time is different. Because every empire collapses the same way, and America, right now, has already stepped into stage 5. Stage 1, the rise, unity and ambition. Every empire begins with hunger. Not for land or wealth at first, but for survival, progress, and identity. In its early days, the empire is born from struggle, a people united by vision, discipline, and belief. Rome began as a small city fighting for its place among warring tribes. Spain was a divided kingdom that rose through exploration and faith. Britain was a rainy island that turned ships into tools of global reach. And America, too, started as a fragile experiment. 13 colonies clinging to an idea called freedom. During this stage, the citizens are not yet divided by wealth or power. They share a mission: build, expand, and improve. Innovation thrives because necessity demands it. Rome built aqueducts to feed its growing cities. Spain developed navigation to cross oceans. Britain sparked the Industrial Revolution. And America powered by industry, steel, and invention, transformed into the world's factory and later its digital brain. Empires in this stage are agile and resilient. They attract the best minds, the boldest dreamers, and those seeking opportunity. Society rewards hard work and risk-taking. Corruption is low because ambition still serves the collective good. In America's rise, you could feel that energy. Families moving westward, immigrants arriving with nothing but hope, workers building railroads and cities that touched the sky. But every rise hides its first weakness. The faster an empire grows, the more it begins to forget the humility that built it. The focus shifts from creating value to keeping power. And as soon as ambition turns into entitlement, the next stage begins. Because after the rise comes the reward, and reward always carries a price. Stage 2, the growth, prosperity, and power. This is the Golden Age, the time when the empire believes it has found the formula for endless success. Trade flourishes, cities expand, and the currency becomes the world's standard. The empire's culture spreads far beyond its borders. People around the world look up to it as the center of progress and stability. Rome, at its height, connected 3 continents with its roads and law. Spain's silver from the Americas made it the richest kingdom in Europe. Britain's empire stretched across oceans, with the phrase, "the sun never sets," becoming literal truth. And America, during the mid-20th century, reached its zenith. Its dollar backed by gold, its factories unstoppable, its innovation unmatched. Citizens feel proud and confident. The middle class thrives. The empire's language, fashion, and ideals dominate the world. Global allies align with it willingly, not out of fear, but admiration. The military grows, but it's seen as a protector of peace, not an aggressor. Education expands. Life expectancy increases. It feels as though the story of decline has been defeated forever. But prosperity has a side effect: complacency. When wealth becomes normal, efficiency fades. Bureaucracy grows. Leaders begin to protect the system instead of improving it. The focus shifts from production to consumption, from innovation to speculation. People begin to believe that what was earned through struggle will last without sacrifice. In America, this era looked like the post-war boom. Suburban homes, booming industries, technological revolutions. Yet even then, the seeds of dependency were being planted. As comfort rises, ambition weakens. And that's when the empire quietly steps into the third stage, the age of excess. Stage 3, the excess, luxury, pride, and inequality. When prosperity turns to luxury, the empire begins to drift from its roots. The focus moves away from production toward enjoyment. Citizens become more concerned with lifestyle than discipline. Leaders grow proud and disconnected. The idea of earning gives way to the desire for entitlement. In ancient Rome, wealth poured in from conquered lands, creating vast inequalities. The elite built marble palaces while farmers abandoned their fields. Spain's gold shipments made nobles rich, but destroyed domestic industry. Britain's upper class lived lavishly while colonies struggled. And in modern America, wealth concentration has reached extremes unseen since the Gilded Age. Billion-dollar corporations dominate politics, while millions work paycheck to paycheck, crushed by inflation and debt. Excess doesn't only mean luxury, it also means excess confidence. The empire begins to believe its system is unshakable. Warnings are dismissed. Economists who speak of limits are mocked. The financial markets balloon with speculation. Consumption is celebrated as patriotism, and those who question it are seen as pessimists. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens start feeling detached from the promise of fairness. The cost of living rises faster than wages. Debt becomes the lifeline of the middle class. The empire's moral compass shifts. Entertainment replaces education, and fame replaces merit. When the few control too much, corruption becomes inevitable. Every empire at this stage loses self-awareness. It mistakes wealth for strength, influence for respect. The gap between the powerful and the powerless becomes unbridgeable. The system that once united now divides. And when division takes hold, the age of decay begins. Stage 4, the decay. Division and corruption empires rarely fall because of enemies. They fall because of themselves. When internal trust collapses, no army or wealth can save them. In this stage, unity disintegrates into tribalism. The empire's people stop seeing themselves as one nation and begin fighting each other from within. Rome's Senate turned into a theater of corruption and personal vendettas. Spain lost focus as its nobles prioritized wealth over governance. Britain's parliament fractured over ideology. The Soviet Union drowned in bureaucracy and censorship. In modern America, political polarization has reached levels unseen in generations. Every debate becomes a war. Every election feels like a battle for survival. Facts are replaced by narratives, and truth becomes optional. Corruption thrives because institutions no longer serve the people. They serve themselves. The justice system bends for the powerful. The media divides instead of informs. Corporations write laws behind closed doors. The empire that once led through example now struggles to lead itself. In this climate, fear replaces faith. Citizens retreat into echo chambers. Trust in leadership collapses. The economy becomes weaponized through politics. Inflation, debt, and taxation spark resentment, not unity. When the people stop believing in the system, the foundation begins to crumble. Quietly at first, then all at once. At this point, history shows that empires double down on control instead of reform. And that decision always leads them to the next and most dangerous stage, the decline. Stage 5, the decline. Currency, debt, and overreach. This is the moment when decline becomes undeniable, though leaders will never admit it. Economically, the empire begins to live beyond its means. It prints more money, borrows from the future, and spends to maintain an illusion of strength. The currency, once a symbol of trust, becomes a weapon of survival. Rome debased its silver coins to pay armies it could no longer afford. Spain flooded Europe with gold and caused its own inflation. Britain borrowed massively to protect its empire during world wars. And America, the modern empire, has now accumulated debt surpassing $35 trillion. The dollar remains dominant, but its supremacy is being challenged by nations forming new alliances, seeking escape from a system they no longer trust. Military overreach follows financial weakness. When problems grow at home, empires look outward. Wars, interventions, missions of peace. Each one drains more resources, increases more debt, and fuels more division. Meanwhile, infrastructure decays, healthcare strains, and education falters. The empire can no longer sustain the lifestyle it promised its citizens, but perhaps the greatest symptom of decline is denial. People sense the change, yet leaders insist everything is fine. The stock market still rises, though fewer benefit. Media distractions grow louder. Bread and circuses replace solutions. This is stage 5, the point of no return for most empires. Some recover with humility, others fall with arrogance. The next stage decides which path America takes. Stage 6, the fall. Collapse and reset collapse never happens in a single day. It's a process, the final unraveling of everything that was once strong. In this stage, the empire's systems fail simultaneously. The economy weakens, alliances dissolve, and the currency loses credibility. What was once unthinkable becomes reality. Rome's legions stopped receiving pay. Spain's ships stopped returning. Britain lost its colonies as debts crushed its treasury. The Soviet Union couldn't even feed its people. For America, the fall may not come with invasion, but with exhaustion. Economic breakdown, loss of global dominance, or a massive social fracture. Inflation or currency replacement could trigger it. A crisis of confidence could spread faster than any war. History shows that during collapse, empires turn inward. They impose stricter control, censor dissent, and divide the population further. Chaos becomes normalized. The world that once depended on the empire begins to move on without it. Global influence fades, replaced by new powers rising from its shadow. But even in collapse, something remarkable happens. Clarity. The empire sees what it ignored for decades. Unsustainable debt, unchecked greed, lost unity. Collapse is painful, but it's also honest. It strips away illusions. And what remains after the fall is the chance, however small, for renewal. Stage 7. The rebirth. Lessons or extinction. After every collapse comes a choice: rebuild or vanish. Some empires never return, like Spain's. Others reinvent themselves, like Britain. The fall of Rome gave birth to new nations, ideas, and eventually a renaissance. Collapse ends one chapter but begins another. For the United States, the potential for rebirth still exists. The same creativity, innovation, and resilience that built it can rebuild it. But only if humility replaces pride and unity replaces division. The empire must rediscover what made it strong: opportunity, fairness, discipline, and truth. Rebirth requires pain. It demands letting go of illusions, confronting corruption, and rebuilding trust from the ground up. History shows that societies that learn their lesson emerge stronger. Those that ignore it disappear. The question is not whether collapse will come. It's whether rebirth will follow. Because no empire lasts forever, but neither does darkness. The cycle of rise and fall is eternal, and within every end lies the blueprint for a new beginning. And now, as we stand here, watching the world's headlines unfold, the markets tremble, the debt rise, and the trust fade, it's hard not to feel the weight of history pressing down on America. Every empire in history believed it was different. Rome believed its dominance was permanent. The British Empire believed the sun would never set on its flag, and the Soviets believed their ideology would rule forever. Yet every one of them, no matter how powerful, reached the same ending, not because they were conquered, but because they collapsed from within. America today stands at that critical junction. Some say we're at stage 5. Others argue we're already sliding into stage 6. But one thing is clear. The warning signs are all around us. The debt clock is spinning faster than ever. Political division feels deeper than at any point since the Civil War. Institutions that once symbolized trust now trigger skepticism. The economy, while still vast and powerful, runs increasingly on credit, speculation, and fragile confidence. But here's the truth that history also teaches us. Collapse isn't always sudden. It's slow, almost invisible at first. The citizens of Rome didn't wake up one day to find their empire gone. It faded year by year as corruption spread and priorities shifted. The same happened with Britain, Spain, the Ottomans, and the Soviets. They all ignored the early warnings because comfort made them blind to decline. That's the dangerous illusion America risks falling into right now. The belief that it's too big to fail, too modern to repeat the past. Yet within every collapse, there's also a rebirth. When one empire fades, something new rises. The question is, will America find a way to reinvent itself before the pattern completes? Or will we watch history repeat chapter by chapter until the final stage arrives? Maybe the answer depends on whether we as citizens recognize what stage we're truly in. Because if history repeats itself, awareness becomes the most powerful form of resistance. Empires don't collapse just because of the elite. They collapse because ordinary people stop believing that change is possible. And perhaps that's the real test America faces. Now, not just economically or politically, but spiritually. The ability to rebuild trust, restore discipline, and rediscover purpose. History tells us collapse isn't destiny. It's a warning. A chance to wake up before it's too late. So as we close this story of empires, Rome, Spain, Britain, the USSR, remember, the pattern isn't fate, but a mirror. A mirror reflecting the same mistakes, the same pride, the same blind spots. The United States can either learn from those reflections or become another chapter in the same tragic cycle. Because at the end of every empire's story, there's a moment like this when the future is still unwritten. The question isn't whether empires fall. They always do. The question is what comes after. And that is up to us.